You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Well, yesterday you got the East Division preview. Now we're going to have the Avengers-style West Division preview as well. Britton Gray, the Rider reporter for the Green Zone, will be joining us to talk Riders. Ryan Ballantine with 3 Down Nation to talk Stamps. Andrew with the Turf District to talk Elks. Nik Kowalski, the digital media manager for the BC Lions, to talk Lions. And Zach Schnitzer of Bonfire Sports to talk Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Man, we only got, 4 more days? 2 more days until kickoff, man? It's been too long. On one hand, it felt like the season or the off season was really long, like a marathon. But on the other hand, it's, where did it go? What did I accomplish? Nothing. And now I'm going to accomplish even less because football's back, Sheldon.
Same. And how could I be less productive when I'm already watching so much wrestling every week? And I have to fit in, 3 or 4 extra CFL games now. But we'll find a way.
Goodbye, sleep.
Find a way.
It was nice to know you for that one Saturday in December. This stuff was all recorded prior to May 27th, so some of the info may be old news by now. It's a long show with 5 teams to get to, so let's do it. And joining the show now is the Rider reporter from the Green Zone, Britton Gray. Thanks so much for coming on Two and Out to talk about the 2024 Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Absolutely glad to be here, and it just means football's back, right? That's the exciting part.
Yes, right. We are recording this a day after Saskatchewan's preseason win over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but a lot can change between now and the regular season, as we've all seen as CFL fans. But we're here talking after back-to-back 6-12 seasons with 0 wins after Labor Day. But all of a sudden, it just seems like there's a renewed sense of optimism in Riderville. I'm in Alberta, but I feel the energy coming from Saskatchewan. Everybody's tied in first place, 0-0, but people seem very excited right now.
I mean, a lot of excitement in Saskatchewan, right? You got a new head coach who's very personable, right? A head coach who kind of speaks well and speaks with energy, speaks with a confidence that's kind of has been missing from this team over the past few seasons. Just kind of the way that the past 2 years have gone, a lot of people were tuning this team out. They just were. They weren't interested in what was being put out there. Corey Mace brings some energy, and you're starting to just see it already. They also brought Jamarcus Hardrick. There's not a bigger energy guy in probably the CFL than Jamarcus Hardrick. Twice already, he's already chest bumped Keen Schaefer Baker, nearly put him into benches.
Wow.
So, I mean, the energy's here. There's excitement. And like you said, everyone's 0-0 right now. Records are even. But we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously the health of Trevor Harris is the biggest kind of thing, I think, for this team to be successful this season.
I do want to ask quickly about that. I guess the whole new coaching staff. You talk about the energy, and we're talking about practice, to quote Allen Iverson. But I've never seen a group of fans get so excited about practice and how things were going. I guess talk about the change when it comes to that and the on-field stuff you've been able to see so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jamie Nye has a better grasp of this because I only covered Craig Dickinson. That was my first coach covering the team. Right. But he said the practice we saw when the pads came out the first time with Corey Mace at training camp, just the intensity, people flying around, the energy, was the best he's seen since before Craig Dickinson in 4 or 5 years. Just the energy is up. And another big thing with currently right now is accountability. This Riders team, the past few seasons, have led the CFL in penalties. And it felt like if you're looking in from the outside, nothing was being done. We don't know what was going on behind the doors, but it felt like nothing was being done. The same mistakes were being made. No one was getting sat, even though they probably should have been sat last year. And now accountability this year. There was a punch thrown in training camp by one of the players. he made them run, and it got a standing ovation from all the fans who were there. So accountability is a big thing, and you're seeing it there, and just intensity. Like I said, Corey Mace's personality is infectious. He's intense. And kind of, we always say teams embrace the personality of their head coaches. They become like that. And I think you're slowly starting to see that happen with this Riders team, which has people excited for what this season could hold.
Yeah, and so with all the changes that have happened, I think one that I and probably most other Rider fans are kind of looking forward to the most here is we know Trevor Harris is a starter, and he looked okay in the preseason game. I didn't get to go. I was stuck in pain with my sciatica, so I missed the game yesterday. But so tell me about your views in camp on the other backup, the battle for the backup quarterback, and then tell me about what you saw in the game opposed to in camp.
I mean, admittedly, the backup quarterback spot should be a place of concern right now. There's no one who has like performed well enough where it's like, okay, if Trevor Harris goes down, they won't miss a beat with this new guy in. It just hasn't happened. I mean, Mason Fine, I've said it on the Green Zone. I feel like we've seen what the ceiling of Mason Fine. He hasn't taken those kind of steps forward you want to see for a guy who's in his fourth year in the league, where that's opportunity. But nothing is just kind of happening there that's exciting. That like he might be a good backup, but if Trevor Harris is down for 6-7 weeks, there's nothing been shown that he's the guy. Now, hey, I always say, prove me wrong. If Mason Fine goes out and wins a bunch of games, hey, I'll be happy to be wrong. But I just haven't seen that kind of spark. Shea Patterson, to me, was kind of the one I wanted to see take that step because he's from Michigan. Like, he went some big college programs. Just in the pros, it's never kind of come together for him, whatever reason that may be. The UFL struggled there. Now I feel like he's mentally in a place where he's focusing on the CFL. He knows what he has to do. He's the CFL quarterback. This is what he's going to do. And he kind of looked the best in the preseason game. He went 3 for 3, should have been 4 for 4 with a big toss to Keyshawn Johnson, but Joe's penalty, of course, wipes that off. But that was a beautifully thrown ball. So it seems like I said taking steps. He's taken a step forward. So I kind of view him as leading the way in that number 2 spot. Now, of course, coaches can see whatever they want. They have different what they're looking for, but I view him as the number 2. Antonio Pipkin, he's a short yardage guy. He's thrown some nice balls at training camp, but we kind of know what Antonio Pipkin is at this point in the league. He's a short yardage guy. Jack Cohn looked very comfortable out there in his first preseason game. Now, there were some mistakes, but that's going to happen. First guy in the CFL, but he didn't look completely out of place, and he handled some short yardage stuff in the fourth quarter there. So maybe he finds a way to stick around the PR. And another guy, kind of when you get these quarterbacks in the first year, you don't expect too much. Kind of keep them on the PR, let them learn the game. And then year 2 and 3 is where you look for these big jumps from these quarterbacks. So currently, right now, I think Shea Patterson's number 2. Mason Fine kind of on the outside looking in, but he got hurt or something in the preseason game. Corey Mace said there was something wrong with his body and they pulled him out because of it. So it makes it sound like when he got hit, something just went wrong. So maybe he gets an opportunity in Edmonton here to kind of retake that number 2 spot. But then Pipkin has a short yardage guy. Jack Cohn has a PR, but I don't see how they keep all 5 quarterbacks on this roster.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from Cohn for his short yardage, so I'm wondering if maybe he gets in there again in the second game and they could save a little bit of money by, cutting Pipkin and going with him. But talk to us about the O-line now. So you mentioned Jamarcus Hardrick, almost injuring one of our star receivers. What have you been seeing in camp about this updated O-line that we've gotten?
I mean, it should be better on paper, right? It feels like they've made the right moves. Left tackle is going to be very interesting. Left tackle, there's been no one who really makes you feel completely 100% confident in him. Trevor Reed is getting the reps, but he's a first-year CFLer. Yeah, he's spent some time with the Eagles and learning from guys like Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce. Sorry, not Travis. Jason Kelce. And so he's learned, but it's like, how does that translate over So we'll see when he finally faces the first stringers, right? Because it was just the second stringers against Winnipeg. Logan Ferland has taken another step, in my opinion. Like, you talk about a guy who's getting pushed. They brought in Ryan Sevier, who was a West All-Star at guard, and he's held them off for the most part. Ryan Sevier's been with the twos, while Ferland's been with the starters. So that's what you want to see, guys taking steps, especially a young guy like Ferland. Peter Godber going to be a solid center. He's one of the better centers in the league. Philip Blake, despite his age, is still one of the best offensive linemen in the league. Now, of course, health-wise, he's had some injuries every time he's been in Saskatchewan, so we'll see if he stays healthy. And then, like I said, Jamarcus Hardrick, he's already the emotional leader of that offensive line group, of maybe the offense, just of the way he's always in people's faces, kind of cheering them on, even yelling at the defense to get after the ball. Like, he's like, Jamarcus Hardrick is going to be a fan favorite for Rider fans, because his personality is just so infectious, and he's very noticeable out there.
I want to ask about the Canadian receiver group. I feel like Schaefer Baker's almost gotten forgotten about outside of Saskatchewan. He made a return from injury last year, so he didn't reach the levels he did before, but coming in this year, hopefully healthy from the start. And there's Mitch Picton, Braden Lenius, Samuel Emelis, and also Adjo. He ended up making an impact in that first preseason game of his. It seems like a very big strength of this team.
Listen, people, obviously, with Jeremy O'Day and the way seasons have gone, have really kind of blamed him for a lot of it. His drafting has been top-notch. When you look at the draft classes he's brought in, the talent he's found, especially at receivers, it's been really good. And here's another example, like Keane Schaefer-Baker. I'll say first, if people forgot about him, he had a highlight reel catch in that preseason game where he had to adjust. It looks like he's 100% healthy after dealing with kind of that hip surgery last year. He looks rejuvenated. Sam Emelis, if he takes another step, he could have 1,500 yards. He's turned into one of the premier deep threats in the league. But Braden Lenius, there should be concern if you're Braden Lenius, because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And he's once again missing time, and we'll see exactly how long he's missing. But if he misses an extended period of time, hey, every opportunity, these guys are coming to take your job. And you have a guy like Adjo who is, like, talent-wise ridiculous. He was a part of a Clemson recruiting class that was voted top 3 in the nation back when he was recruited. So a lot of talent, but he's bounced around universities. What's the reason for that? Is it a mental thing? Is it immaturity? Why is that? So kind of something with him. Del Duncan Busby is a guy who you want to keep an eye on, because in terms of all the receivers in this past draft class, he was the most productive. Every year he had near 50 catches, 900 yards, and double-digit touchdowns at Bemidji State. Does he take a step? And so a lot of talent. Mitch Picton. Mitch Picton is one of the best kind of backups in the league, because he can go wherever. Yeah. If someone goes down, you can play him in any receiver spot, which is invaluable to any team. So a lot of great talent, a lot of guys stepping up. And like I said, Braden Lenius, if you're not out there, someone's going to take your job. And I like Braden. I think he can be talented. He's one of my favorite people to interview. But your best ability is availability, and he just hasn't been available to this team recently.
Yeah, I think if Adju makes the team, it's just Adju squared. I think that's going to be. Let's go with that.
I like that.
Yes, he has to stay onside though. He had the offside in that game, and that's something Corey Mace will be sure to address.
Yes. Okay, so we did see a lot of positives in the game, but tell us about some of the holes that you think are on this Riders team right now.
It's really tough just on the preseason game, because they were against a bunch of backups. A pass rusher, right? Like, will Malik Carney be that guy and emerge this year? Is Brian Cox Jr. the guy on the other side on the defensive end? I really liked what Christian Albright did last year, but he's kind of been the backup. So an elite pass rusher. Interior wise, some guys flashed, but Micah Johnson should start there. But he's 35, right? Mm-hmm. You eventually have to find the next guy, despite the fact that Micah Johnson still gets double teamed every time he's out there, which opens up spots. But find a guy there. The defensive backfield, it's interesting. They moved Nelson Lacombo to field corner at the green and white game, which they had never done prior in training camp. He's always been the backup safety. That was the first time they put him there. Had him there at the game. So makes you wonder what they're doing with their ratio, kind of what they see there. But they lost Jalen Edwards-Cooper. That was going to be their starting field corner. He failed his physical. They release him. Haven't closed the door on him, but who knows if or when he ever plays for the Riders. He was a very good signing, so you have to find that. CJ Revis is already injured. Amari Henderson is already dealing with stuff. We won't know, like, the issues I see with this team is the depth. Will the depth step up? Because last year, when Roland Milligan went out, no one filled that spot. They struggled all year to find someone to fill that. And so we'll see. And then, I mean, like I said, the offensive left tackle spot, that's going to be something to watch. No one really there who you're 100% confident in, at least until they start playing against some talent. But otherwise, like, this team looks solid. On paper, it looks like a very much improved team. So it's tough for me to say, here's the holes I see when we only saw them against backups and third and fourth stringers.
Is it fair to say, like, is AJ Ouellette right now at this time when we're talking the best addition to this team? I mean, this guy seems all in on Rider Nation. He's making himself a whole new fan base of his own.
He's up there, right? Just the personality and the fact that I think he is going to be what this team wants, which is a bruising running back. I think this team wants to make opposing players not want to tackle in the third and fourth quarters. They want to kind of keep these guys on their toes, run over them. That's what AJ Ouellette brings. Well, once again, Jamarcus Hardrick, another key. Like, his person, like, just watching him, guys, I can't speak enough about the personality Jamarcus Hardrick is right now. But AJ Ouellette, he's been good. But I mean, the preseason game, Frankie Hickson really flashed. And I've been a fan of Frankie Hickson since his rookie year. The way he runs angry, but is deceptively quick. And Clint Rakovich, out of kind of, I don't know about nowhere, if you kind of follow him, he's kind of highly regarded. He's come to this team. He's listed as a fullback. He may as well be a running back because that's where they use him more. And he's very talented as well when you watch him run the ball. So AJ Ouellette, there's a lot of competition at running back. We always talk about the running back position kind of being one short lifespan. But AJ will be great. He'll be great for this team, kind of bringing in that Corey Mace winning culture, being with him in Toronto. And you can't, I don't think you put any sort of, I don't say price tag, but the importance of that.
Is Sean Bain Jr. going to take another step forward, a second-year Rough Rider here? The speed, the deep threat. I know it's the preseason game, but it seems like this guy, they want to get him more involved in the offense, and Trevor Harris and him are building a connection there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, like I said, just like Sam Emelis, he also had 1,000 yards last year. If they take another step, 12, 13, 1,400, why not? It was funny because in the preseason game, the first pass Trevor Harris completed was to Sean Bain Jr., which went for 65 yards before Bain was tracked down by one of the defenders. And after the game, Harris said he made sure to let Bain know that Bain's been tracked down from behind more than Harris has this year so far. So he has that on him right now. Harris hasn't been hit from behind quite yet after when yeah.
He Harris himself, he seems like he's got a chip on his shoulder a little bit, and he wants to kind of prove everybody that he's still got it, and he's recovered after that injury last year.
Yeah, he was asked a question after the game just about, do you feel like you have to prove it to people this year? The fact that he's going to be 38 when this season starts, first major injury, and his knee was broken in plenty of places. Like, it wasn't just one little thing. And he said, just watch. He wants to prove people wrong. He wants to prove he has it. And the 38 and like CFL quarterbacking is weird, right? Because a lot of these guys don't become starters until they're 30 or 31 in the CFL when they eventually do the NFL, come down. So like if we were doing it last year, I forget who it was, but like Darian Durant was in his mid to late 30s when he first won a Grey Cup. Henry Burris, like all these guys, 38 isn't ancient in the CFL when you compare it to NFL quarterbacks. And so there's still a lot left in his tank, I feel, but he has to stay healthy. Well, right now, that is the key for this team is Trevor Harris's health, because if a backup's called upon, who knows where this season can go.
The 2024 edition of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. As a longtime fan, it's an exciting time of year because, like I said before, everyone's tied for first, and it does look like the powers in the West right now are Winnipeg and BC. I really don't think there's any arguing that. But the other three, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, and Calgary, it might be a battle to get into that last playoff spot where the Riders haven't been for a little while.
It absolutely could be. When I look at the West this year, I think BC is the best team in the West right now. I think Winnipeg takes a step back. I thought last year they were going to take a step back, and now they finally have lost some guys, right? They don't have Jackson Jeffcoat, Jamarcus Hardrick. They're another year older. Adam Big Hill's already dealing with an injury, or at least has been put on to the injured list. Don't know if that's any sort of roster stuff. Who knows at this time of the year? But there's concerns around Winnipeg, so I think they take a step back. Edmonton, who knows with Edmonton, when the fact that they continue to not give Trey Ford the opportunity and went out and signed McLeod Bethel Thompson. Once again, big fan of McLeod Bethel Thompson, but you had something good in Trey Ford. And Calgary, this could be tough for Calgary. Jake Mayer, I have not been a fan of what I've seen from him. Matthew Schultz might end up being the starter out of training camp. I think it's an open competition there when you go out and sign a guy like Matt Schultz, who has shown he can at least be productive while as a starter wherever he's been, but hasn't been given the full opportunity. So Calgary, I think, might be tough, but we'll see. You never know. We all thought the Montreal Alouettes weren't going to be good last year.
It's even worth predicting, you know?
Yeah. No one had Montreal at the beginning of the year Grey Cup champions.
Yeah.
Careful, you get a lot of hate if you say that Calgary's not going to be good this year.
The Saskatchewan-Calgary rivalry is still alive and well. How have you? I just want to ask about the defense one more time. I felt like it was the strength of the team going into the past few seasons, and then fell apart as the season went on. Now there's a completely different system in. Corey Mace is in place. I'm excited to see Jameer Thurman playing linebacker in green and white. Derek Moncrief is gone. Pete Robertson is gone. Is the defense going to be another strength of the team? What are you thinking on that front?
I think so, because you have a defensive coach, right? That's kind of where you expect the strength to be. And I mean, they got rid of some guys like Nick Marshall. He gave up. He quit on that team. You could tell kind of the last part of the season, it was throwing the shoulder, not wrapping up guys, throwing the shoulder. That kind of bleeds into the entire team when you don't have a coach who's going to call that out or sit him. And so I think the kind of addition by subtraction there, Jameer Thurman, we know how good of a linebacker he is. Micah Johnson there still to kind of be a leadership. Malik Carney, does he finally reach double-digit sacks, right? There's a lot to like right now. CJ Rivas, if he's healthy, when I was looking at stats, you compare him to other Sam linebackers. He had some of the best stats in the league, despite the fact he wasn't a starter for most of last year. Like, when given the opportunity, he's been good. Roland Milligan being back, I can't speak enough about that. Roland Milligan's one of my favorite defenders to watch because he hits hard. Deontay Williams, he kind of came on last year. I like the way he plays. There's a lot to like right now. And I think Corey Mace and his ability to talk to these guys and motivate them, there should be a lot of excitement around this defense, because I think they've addressed some needs. And Corey Mace, just what we've seen from wherever he's gone with the defense, it's always improved. It's always been good. So I do think it'll be another strength.
The Riders open up their season June 8th in Edmonton, so we'll see who comes together quickest out of Edmonton and Saskatchewan. Britton Gray is the Rider reporter for the Green Zone. Thanks so much for coming on the show to talk 2024 Saskatchewan Roughrider football.
Absolutely. Always enjoy talking football. The season's back, finally. Long off season.
And joining the show now, Ryan Ballantine from the Go Stamps Go Show, a contributor at 3downnation.com. It's become almost tradition to talk Stampeders on 2 and Out at this time of year, so thanks for being here again.
Pleasure as always. Glad to be back.
All right, I do want to start off here. The Stamps are coming off a 6-12 season and a semifinal loss to the BC Lions, but in that 6-12 season, keeping the playoff streak alive in Cowtown. Like, how do they do it, man?
You're welcome.
It helps that Saskatchewan sucks and Edmonton's a dumpster fire. That really helped. The idea that the Stampeders made the playoffs last year, I think, was something that nobody was surprised by. That they made it at 6-12, I think might have been a surprise.
Yeah.
It is the worst season that they've had under this kind of Hufnagel-Dickinson era since 2008. But they just keep on rolling and can only get better from here.
Now, the strength of the Stampeders is obviously the continuity of almost everything, from head coach to GM to president. Well, now Jay McNeil is a president of the team. John Hufnagel's now sort of in an advisory role, and he's earned that. Let's be clear there. Is there a lot of pressure on these guys? I mean, to have a really good season this year? Or kind of where's the temperature with Stampeder fans regarding them?
Well, it's definitely going to be an interesting kind of spot to be in, because for a long time, Stampeder fans kind of believed that the season started in November. Right. The regular season is great, but it doesn't matter because we know we're getting to the playoffs, and all that matters is what you do in the playoffs. Well, now by the time the playoffs roll around, they'll be nearly 6 years removed from their last playoff win. And that's not good enough. When you look at the last time they won a playoff game was the Grey Cup game.
Wow.
In 2018. And since then they've lost Western Finals, they've lost Western Semifinals, and just haven't been able to get it done. So when you consider that from a Stampeders perspective, I would suggest that, yes, the pressure is on this group to be more successful and to improve. And I think that there's going to need to be at least a playoff victory, if not, and I would consider hosting the West Final to be a victory in that stretch and a step forward in that direction. So I think if the Stamps were to win the West but not get into the Grey Cup, there might be that kind of, okay, we've taken forward steps. But if you miss the playoffs or lose another Western semifinal, I don't know what happens to this group, and I don't know what happens to this coaching staff as it is, because they just haven't been able to get over the hump.
Yeah, Calgary has been like a quarterback factory for years and years and years. So this Jake Maier, he's not really living up to that as of yet. Contract year for him coming up here. He started all the games last year. What do you think his outlook is this year, and what do you think his leash is going to be like?
It's been very interesting for me with Jake, because of course you've had two Jakes. You had the 2023 Jake, who wasn't good, and I don't think he would say he was any good either. Was throwing just mostly checkdowns, keeping it there, keeping it in. And trying to dink and dunk his way down the field, but was also on the run for a good chunk of the season. He was not getting good protection from the tackle spot and was constantly under pressure, and as a result had to get rid of the ball faster. Now flip that back a year when you had Julian Good-Jones and Derek Dennis patrolling the tackle spots, and if you prorate Jake Maier's numbers, he's a top 2 quarterback in the CFL. So if you take his 9 games that he played for the Stampeders, translate that to a full season, he's competitive with Zach Collaros in that season, and no one's questioning Zach Collaros at this point, right? So the question this year for me is, did the Stampeders improve at the tackle position? Did they find someone who's able to give Jake Maier the time that he needs? And let's also not forget that last year you lose Malik Henry after just a couple games. Clark Barnes was showing to be an incredibly versatile Canadian receiver. He went down for half a season. You also lost Jalen Philpott before the year even began last year, and he was supposed to be a big piece of the receiving core. So when you have 3 starting receivers go down and your tackles aren't protecting you, what are you expecting the quarterback to do? That he was able to even drag this team into the playoffs at all in that scenario is to me more of a credit to him. The interceptions were bad at the beginning of the year. They slowed down in the back half. I think he only threw 3 interceptions in the last 9 games, 3 or 4 maybe in the last 9 games. So there were positive steps. Now, whether or not those positive steps can keep going forward, that's going to be the question. And I do think that the Matthew Schultz signing indicates that the Stampeders are telling Jake, you better be good. If we're healthy and we get you help, you need to be the Jake Maier that we cut Bo Levi Mitchell for instead of the Jake Maier that we saw last season.
And they bring in a new quarterback coach, right? That worked with Bo in his university days.
And everybody else. Eastern Washington was a factory for the CFL for a while.
So is that taking pressure off Dave in that part of his duties? It seemed like he had a lot on his plate, and we saw Hamilton step back from the double thing with Orlando Steinauer. Is Bo gonna help with being a quarterback coach in that regard?
I wrote it in the off season that I thought Dave Dickinson should give up one of his hats. And I think it's not just because of the work, because I think we've seen GMs and head coaches be able to do the work. I don't think that the work is the issue, and I would never question Dave Dickinson's ability to do both jobs. But where I think that we've lost the track here in this particular scenario is players have changed. When Wally Buono was doing the dual role, guys in the 90s were grateful to be playing football. And now the mindset amongst most modern players is, you should be grateful I signed with you. And so now what you've got is your general manager hat, where you're telling a guy, hey, I need you to take less because you're not worth what you think you're worth. And then that same guy, you have to look in the eye on game day and say, I need you to play above your contract because you need to be worth more than you're paid. And how difficult is that to manage anymore? It's not the 90s. It's not the early 2000s. It is very much a different mindset in all employment. And football is no different. People are leaving jobs because they're not happy. And when you don't have the ability and the separation of church and state between GM and head coach, handling that portion of the job has got to be incredibly difficult.
Wow, that is a fascinating way to look at it. We saw towards the end of Wally Buono's career, sort of the same struggles. And hey, he's getting put on that Wall of Fame in Calgary finally, I should say, this summer. I do want to ask about those receivers. Of course, you have the great experience and ability in Reggie Bagleton and Markin Michel. And even though he's coming off injury, I'm going to say Malik Henry, he's already shown that he can have these big play abilities there. But between Clark Barnes and Jalen Philpott, and I'm a fan of Trey Odom's Dukes, it seems like there's going to be an odd guy out. But after last year, a lot of criticism was thrown at that receiving group, even if they were young, inexperienced, and kind of thrown to the wolves because of injury. Is there any new names that we haven't talked about, or is it really just keeping these current crop of guys healthy and productive?
Well, I think you are going to see guys coming back from injury from last year. In the red and white game on the weekend, Clark Barnes made the best catch of the session in my mind. He picked one up off his shoelaces in stride and was able to keep running for another couple yards before the simulated tackle was called. Of course, you've still got Reggie Bagleton, who's one of the best in the game. Trey Odom's Dukes, to me, has always been a great kind of injury replacement, or a guy that's not the starter, but he's the guy who comes in to spell guys off here and there. He had trouble with drops. He's had trouble with drops his entire career. And so that sometimes brings him into question a little bit. He did have the only touchdown of the session this weekend. But you've also got Markin Michel, who we didn't mention, who came back last year and is now kind of back. And we see that with a lot of guys when they come back from the NFL. It takes them a while to get the CFL game back into their bones. So you'll have Markin Michel back. So I do think that the Stampeders receiving core is better than it was at the end of last season, and that's addition through guys of injury. However, guys like Epps, Isaiah Epps caught a couple of nice balls on the weekend. And so I think there are going to be some guys that are around in the periphery. It took Kamar Jordan 5 years to crack this team as a receiver because they just kept bringing in the new guy. So I'm really looking forward to what these guys are able to offer in the preseason action. I know Nick Lewis, in talking to him, he's super excited about what some of these rookies are able to show, and thinks that they might be able to steal a spot on this team. And if they do, then good news for Calgary, because they've got talented receivers. But if they're getting better receivers and guys aren't winning those jobs, that just means that the next guy up is going to be even more talented.
We talk about the Calgary quarterback factory, but I think there's a Calgary running back factory going on there. Kadeem Carey's off to Toronto, so they continue to develop that Argonauts franchise, as I'm sure you appreciate, Ryan. But a full season of Dedrick Mills and Peyton Logan, if he's healthy and they're going to get him involved in the offense, I'm excited for that.
Dedrick Mills, I don't know. Are you guys fans of the show The Boys?
I've certainly heard of it.
On Prime?
I've watched the first season. Yeah, that's it so far.
So there's a sequence in the first episode for people who haven't watched it, and I encourage. If you have access to Prime, watch the first episode because you'll see what I'm talking about. The universe's equivalent of the Flash, the guy who can run incredibly fast, is running incredibly fast, and he runs through someone and turns them into a mist. That's Dedrick Mills. Dedrick Mills, when he hits you, you turn into mist. He is the most like you talk about running backs a lot, and you're like, oh, he's contact adverse. No, Dedrick Mills wants to hit you. He wants to run through you. He initiates contact so that he can continue to run over you. And then you've got on the flip side, Peyton Logan, who's a blink and you'll miss him running back, where if you give him a phone booth worth of room, he's going to find the end zone. And so between the two of them, again, if this Calgary offensive line can block like they're capable of, all of a sudden you're going to find that the Calgary offense is right back to where you want it to be, which is 5 or 6 yards on first down from a running back, and then some sort of passing play on the second shot. That's what they were showing in this red and white game on the weekend, was a lot of run first downs, and they're just going to see whether or not they can get that production in 5 or 6 yards.
I do want to ask about the DB group. I think it's another area of the team where they've had about 40 different combinations in the backfield over the past 2 years because of injuries. Jonathan Moxey gets released, but they hang on to Titus Wall, who is only going to get better. He's 25 years old. The Stamps overall are a quite young team. Who else are we looking for in that defensive backfield?
There's 21 of them still. So Your guess is as good as mine, Travis. There's 21 DBs on this roster right now, ahead of this this next round of cuts. And I think that they are trying everybody. Malcolm Thompson made a great interception on the weekend in the back of the end zone. Brandon Dozier is showing that he's not going anywhere. He might be patrolling at safety this year, and he made a brilliant diving punch out of a catch on a receiver on the weekend. So I think there will be some familiar names there. I'm not sure that Trey Roberson is going to lose his job. I expect Brandon Dozier to still be there. Titus Wall at that nickel spot. As far as the rest of the spots, I mean, that's 18 guys for another 3 spots. So I think there could be a lot of opportunity there for a lot of different players, and including the first round draft pick. There was an off the board defensive back that they really liked because of his speed. I really liked when he got on the draft show and they said, "What do you do?" And he goes, "I run fast and I tackle." I thought,
hey, that's what we need.
Good. I'm here to hit dingers.
That's what I need. And let's not forget Demario Houston either. They signed Demario Houston in the offseason as well. So I think Calgary really suffered from injuries last season, and it really led to an underperformance. They lost 8 one-score games last year. And, I mean, even if you flip half of those, they're above 500. If you coin flip half of them into one guy might have made a difference one way or another in a one-score game. I really think that Calgary is better than they looked last year. And again, if they can get production from the tackle spot, to me, far and away, that was the problem last year. They weren't getting production at tackle. If they can get production at tackle this year, it will make an astonishing difference to how the Stampeders look.
I almost don't want to ask, because the additions and the departures thing with the Stampeders, every single year, the Stampeders aren't very involved in free agency or anything like that. So, I mean, they bring in Matt Schiltz, Demario Houston, we talked about, a couple offensive line veterans, Trevon Tate and Kyle Saxlett, and linebacker Micah Tights. That about covers it. So a lot of it is just in that Stampeders factory of recruiting and PR and things like that. But fans of Two and Out will say that our Sheldon Jones is the number one hater of the Calgary Stampeders. So Ryan, your job right now is to convince people like Sheldon Jones why the Calgary Stampeders are going to be back in the playoffs for a 19th straight season.
Well, I've watched Sheldon as I talk, and I can see him getting angrier and angrier. And I feel like the pre-show offer of a free Blizzard is slowly dipping away. But I think.
Oh, you're good. You're such a good salesman that I'm actually like, man, I'm gonna have to.
He's Stampeders first place.
Yeah.
Maybe eight.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the Stampeders. I get why people hate them. They've been good 2 generations. Not like, oh, they've been good for a couple of seasons. They've been good since 1990, with the exception of 3 box factory years where somebody bought the team so his son could play quarterback. If you take those 3 years out of the mix, Calgary's been good for 34 years.
They're the Patriots.
Of course you're going to be mad. Of course you're going to hate them. They've been the team that beat your team your entire life. And how of course you hate them. Why wouldn't you hate them? Of course you do. But here's the thing. There's a reason why they're this good. And the reason is because the guys in the front office have been there for a long time. They don't shuffle out guys when they have, you're seeing teams fire guys with 500 records. Why? What about that says that wasn't enough for you? What about that? Like, I get it if the guy goes 3-15 for a couple of years and that's terrible and you got to get rid of it. That makes sense to me. But if you don't have that kind of continuity, I mean, it even works in the NFL. You look at Bill Belichick was with New England forever. They weren't always good. They weren't always in the playoffs, but they continued to go back to the well, and they were good for a generation. You need to give people time to build a culture. You need to give them time to have that in there. You need players to know that these guys aren't going anywhere. You hear all the time about players quitting on their coaches and coaches getting fired because it's easier to replace one coach than it is to replace 46 football players. Well, when everybody knows the coach isn't going anywhere because, in this case, he's also the general manager, so you're going if you're not fitting into the system, that does cause people to really kind of knuckle down and, okay, I need to make this work here because the guy at the top's not going anywhere. I mean, hell, just looking around, you've got how many? Chris Jones has coached 3 teams in the time that Dave Dickinson's been here, and that's just one guy. You look at every team has shuffled their front office in the time that Calgary's done it, and it just doesn't make sense to me because you're not able to build that culture and you're not able to build on your successes. Not every year is going to end in a Grey Cup championship. I mean, I know I don't have to tell you all that, I couldn't help myself. But I think when you look at what Calgary's done, there's the reason they're the envy of the league, and that's people want to be Calgary. They model themselves on Calgary. Winnipeg's done it with Mike O'Shea having been there now for a good long time, building that building that culture, building that room, and knowing that Mike O'Shea's not going anywhere unless he wants to, and that feeling of permanence really helps structure and anchor an organization, and it breeds success.
I wonder now that Dave Dickinson is a Canadian citizen, if he is a part of the Canadian mafia. The best thing to ever come out of the whole mic'd up saga with the CFL. Finally, I just want to ask you, and I'm going to put a long timeline on this. There have been rumors about Calgary ownership. I think they're just rumors. I'm not sure. Edmonton looks like they're gearing for a change before the end of the season. Will the Stampeders have a new place to play in the next, I'm going to say, 15 years? I'm putting a really long timeline on this.
They have
15 years?
Well, because I didn't want to say 5, because I think the answer is no there. But
no, it's not 5. That's for
any
sure.
rumblings on that front, ownership or stadium?
No, and that's because the city of Calgary just bought them a hockey rink.
Yeah.
So I think as long as the Flames own the Stampeders, I don't see a new stadium being built for the Stampeders. I'd love for it to happen. I honestly would. But at the same time, man, you can bitch about McMahon's bathrooms and concession lines and stuff like that. But there's not a bad seat in that house, and there's not. I've been to other cities, and yeah, the stadium in Winnipeg is great. It's really nice, but the concourses are still crammed. Like the concourses are still crammed. It's impossible to get around, and they've got the brand new stadium. That feature is not any better there than it is here. Despite, you can get better options there from a food perspective than you can get here.
Hold on.
But
hold on. Like, where else can I buy a giant barbecue turkey leg, and then right next I can get a foot-long hot dog, and then the other, like, I've toured McMahon Stadium food options, and then the $10 baked potato that's about a pound of potato, and then another pound of toppings. I'm sorry, Calgary food, they know what they're doing, man.
Calgary food's gotten way better. It's just getting to it.
Oh yeah, okay. There's no Walby burger, but
the way the lines are, the way the structure is.
I get it.
The concourse isn't built for that many people. But at the end, people who complain about McMahon, you're really grasping at the straw because the team is good. You know who doesn't complain about their stadium? The Red Blacks, because they complain about their team. Like, it doesn't matter. I
like that.
You can talk all you want about how man is in comparison to other stadiums, because it is the worst stadium in the league. Fine. It's still better than most? The team on the field. And as it turns out, I'm not a fan of the bathrooms of McMahon Stadium. I'm a fan of the Calgary Stampeders, and it matters what's on the field, and it matters what you can see on the field. You're not at like I've been to everywhere but Tim Hortons Field. I'm hoping to get to the Donut Box eventually, but that's the only field I haven't been to. Man, all of them are the same. At BMO, great place to watch a game. But after the game, you can't actually walk around the stadium because they block half of it off so that the Argos can walk to their dressing rooms and fight fans on the way. Like, that's a problem. That's a problem, right? I've been to New Mosaic. Again, great stadium, really nice. Better for the players than most other stadiums around. But it's not any better in the stands. What am I missing? A cup holder? Okay, I could use a cup holder and a molded seat. Sure, I guess. But really, I mean, Jesus, the standards that people have become accustomed to now are ridiculous. And the idea that you want to I have to sit on a metal bench. Yes, you have to sit on a metal bench like generations of fans before you. Just get over it.
As a fat person, I would love them to bring back the benches. Believe.
Yeah.
More benches, please.
I could use. I use the dual seat with the removable armrest.
Yes.
Yeah. Make the armrest make it at least so it moves up, so that I can spill into my other seat. But I mean, like I sit up high at McMahon. I sit either in the press box or when my family's there, I sit high on the middle benches. I bought a stadium seat off of Amazon for $30, and I'm perfectly comfortable. It's not that tough. It's not that tough to enjoy a game, and I think you're just coddled. These Gen Alpha kids with their inability to sit still. Yerg with me and my gray beard. I can't like it's just, yeah.
I love it.
I mean, I want an indoor stadium. I'm not going to lie. I don't like going to -40 football games. That's ridiculous. I don't think football should be played outside at that temperature. I think football should be played inside. I think the Stampeders have always been a good enough team that playing outside probably cost them several Grey Cups over the years, because they would end up having these track meet teams that were fantastic in July and August, and then they'd have to host a West playoff game, and it would be on the frozen tundra of McMahon Stadium, and all of a sudden they couldn't compete. Play those games inside, and Calgary's probably got way more Grey Cups than they have. But that's a discussion for another day.
This is Ryan Ballantine flexing his podcast muscles. It's good to hear you again, man. A contributor for 3downnation.com and the Go Stamps Go show. So thanks for doing this, and we're looking forward to seeing the red and white on the field again, proving that Sheldon Jones wrong.
Yes. If one Sheldon Jones can be wrong, let it be this one.
Often am. I often am.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Pleasure as always.
And joining the show now is Andrew from the Turf District. We see that legendary James Franklin jersey in the background. You haven't changed it out. What will it take, Andrew?
A lot. That's my guy right there, James Franklin. Yeah, it's like the only game-worn jersey that I own.
Okay.
And I framed it. Looks nice. Blends in really well with the rest of the decor. It's wonderful. I do have the Hulk over here. I don't know if you got to see that one, but I
see his arm. Yeah.
He's got, he's wearing the EE gear and all hulked out, which is also nice. Cool. Maybe at some point I'll swap it up, but for now it's just my heart can't let it go.
I love it. I appreciate that. We're happy to have you back on the show, but I just want to start off talking about quarterbacks. Obviously,
really
I know.
Weird.
Yeah. A lot of fans were really excited to see a full season of Trey Ford, but McLeod Bethel Thompson was brought in. And I know this might throw you off, but since Trevor Harris was benched in 2024, it's been a while since Edmonton has had a quarterback with that sort of success and, veteran poise that MBT has. So what do you notice that's different at camp this year than years past?
The biggest thing that I noticed with MBT is just there is a different feel of leadership on the field. And it doesn't matter whether it's offense or defense or special teams. Any of the guys that I've talked to, that's been their report back to me, is that McLeod makes a difference. He is a true leader. He wants us to succeed. He wants Trey to succeed. He wants to help everybody, raise them up to that Grey Cup caliber. And he does it. He doesn't do it. He's not like a big rah-rah guy, right? He's definitely a guy that is like, okay, this is what I see. What do you see? And how do we make this work? And you see those conversations happening with him and receivers, with him and offensive linemen. You see in between plays, him and Trey coming together saying, oh, I saw this and this is what I would do, whether Trey was throwing or McLeod was throwing. So I think it's really there's a different calmness, but there is this leadership and there's excitement within the team to have that kind of leader. That doesn't mean that they don't believe in Trey. They do. They like Trey, but Trey has never had this kind of experience leadership. And I think that's going to go a long way for him too.
Do you still get the sense that Trey is their long-term plan at quarterback, if long-term plans are such a thing in the CFL?
Yes, absolutely I do. And now, I mean, that's not to say that, things could go awry during the season. You never know these things, right? And like you said, that long-term always needs to be put in quotations when you're talking about the CFL. But I do think that that is the plan. And that this is really an opportunity for him to learn. I mean, the team does need to win. Let's not beat around the bush. Chris Jones is in a situation where he's like, I've got to win or I'm not going to be here. And so this, I think, could help on both fronts. You'll get more wins and you'll get the learning as well that then can be passed on as we go forward. And that's what McLeod talked about when I talked to him was, he's so excited. He says Trey has got so much raw talent. He's such a good and speed and things that you can't teach. But once he gets good at the quick read and the footwork and the little things that happen in the pocket, he'll be even that much better. And that's what his hope. That's what McLeod said. That's what my hope is for Trey. So I think that they are still aiming to go towards that. Obviously, when the change came, it was a bit of a shock because, yes, we had 9 games with Trey and it was exciting football in comparison to what we've seen in a number of years. But it also wasn't a winning record. So I think this has the opportunity to balance that out. And I feel like Jarius Jackson is controlling the situation between the two of them very well, is what I can see to this point.
That's good. We'll stick with the changes. So Jason Shivers, left Saskatchewan. Not that he had a choice. And he's reunited now with Chris Jones to become the assistant head coach, the defensive coordinator, and the linebacker coach. So 3 teams that got off to rough starts last year were Hamilton, Calgary, and Edmonton. All had head coaches who were wearing multiple hats. So do you think the addition of Shivers will take some of the pressure off Jones and let him focus on some of the other stuff?
That is the hope for sure. And in training camp so far, I've probably seen Jones with every phase of the football more than I have in past training camps, which I think goes a long way. I do think that a majority of the GM role really lands with G. Roy Simon. I think he really takes a lot of the heavy lifting of that, but then has that conversation with Jones and they come up with the decision at the end. But especially during training camp, you can see Jones is really in with all 3 phases now saying, what about this? And you can see he's pulling guys aside no matter what position they're playing and giving them okay, I need you to do this and do this way. And you see G-Roy on the sidelines on his cell phone, right? Doing okay, we're going to bring this guy or do this guy. And you see some signings and releases and things like that, which you always see in a training camp. So I think that will let Jones focus more on the specifics of the on-field stuff in every level, which I think is what he needed. I do think that taking that defensive coordinator position and giving it to somebody else, I think it's also very hard for him because that's his baby. That's how he got to where he is. And so it was going to take somebody like Shivers that he trusts a great deal, even from when he had time here with him last time. So I do think that that's a positive step. Now, I know, especially you guys knowing the Riders the way you did, in the last half of the season, that defense was pretty hit or miss. And so there's always that fear that happens here. But I don't know if there is a difference in the fact that Chris Jones still has a hand in it. He's not right in the middle of it, but he still has a hand in it. And I think that does make a difference for where that will end up. And the defense in all of the practices that I've seen so far, the defense is winning a lot of the practices so far. to in my eyes anyway.
I'm not saying that Edmonton is going to win I'm not saying they're going to win the Grey Cup this year, but I'll make
That's okay. Neither am I.
I'll make a comparison to last year. There was ownership uncertainty in Montreal. Everybody was choosing them to be last. Like, I almost see some similarities with Edmonton right now. They lost almost $4 million in 2023. There's all the talk about private ownership, back-to-back 4 and 14 seasons. I mean, what's the pressure on the Chris Jones regime right now? And, I mean, what kind of record does he need to go into 2025 as the guy leading the Elks organization?
Well, you can just call Edmonton a rice pod because it's under a lot of pressure. It's crazy. I think that they feel it. I think the players feel it. They want to have success here. And I was talking with Jamin Pelly, who has been here for most of this awful stretch. And he's like, I just want to win for here. I want to stick around until we can make the win happen. And, we haven't really done the fans right. And so I know the pressure is there. I'm hoping that with the leadership now in place, that it takes away the panic of not getting the win and turns to, okay, we can learn this and now we will win, instead of the last few years. It's very much been, well, this went wrong, so here we go again. And I'm hoping that that's a little bit less this year as they go forward. I would love for them to have the same story as Montreal last year. Wouldn't we all love to have that story? But I do think they have an ability to take a step forward. There's always the outside shot that they get hot near the end of the year, but I think they kind of are in the middle, and that's still better than being at the bottom is what we have been for the last few years.
Now, let's talk about private ownership. It kind of looks like that's going to be happening by the end of the year. I just have to talk about it. I think it's sad that the community model could and looks like will be coming to an end in Edmonton, but do you see positives to this as well?
Oh, I do. I'm the same way. I've always liked the idea that it was a community team. But let's be honest. What a community team meant that there was a board of people who were just running the team. It's not really that when you have a private owner, it just means that they're going to try and make money at it at the same time instead of trying to kind of break even. So there's some exciting possibilities with that. The one thing I will say is with Rick Lawlisher, with the Vanessa, who's the CFO at the Elks, with Tom leading the charge. I think those guys, people, I should be fair, have a lot of knowledge. And I know with Rick being involved in the BC change of ownership, I think that helps a lot. It goes a long way. And I think they all want the long-term best solution for the Elks. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you're getting into these things, you're going to have people who are going to come with a lot of ideas and a lot of I can do this, and this is what I want to do, and tell me more about this so that I know if we can do this, and that type of idea. It's going to be a ton of due diligence that has to happen, but I'm fairly confident in that group to find somebody who wants to take this team and loves the team enough to want it to be around and be successful over the long term. So I'm actually kind of excited to see where that ends up.
Let's transition back to on the field. I just want to ask you about the D-line. You did mention Jamin Pelly. He wants to win for the city, for the fans. But there's big changes on the D-line where Jamin Pelly resides and plugs up the middle of those holes. But Jake Ceresna is in Toronto. AC Leonard may be retiring. So it is a completely new look defensive line. Who are you excited to see getting after quarterbacks in 2024?
Well, I will say one thing that I was it's weird to say that Jamin Pelly is the veteran of the group.
That is.
He's not really all that been around that long. But there's two names that I am going to give to you to watch on the Elks defensive line. The first one is Robert Kimdichie, and he was in the NFL. He's had that experience. He's one of these guys that is, here's your second chance up in the CFL. And the guy has a get off on the ball that I have not seen in quite a while. He's playing alongside Jamin Pelly, and so they're only going to be able to double one of them, and that's going to mean the other one's going to be coming. And the second name, and probably the one that I think we'll hear even more about, is of all things number 41. But not Odell Willis. Although Odell Willis does say that he reminds him of himself, and that is Elliott Brown.
I wish I had that confidence.
Right? Like, no, Elliott doesn't say that. Odell says that.
I wish I had the confidence of Odell to say that somebody reminds me of me. Usually that's an insult, really, but
That's fair. If I said, wow, he reminds me of me, it's like, yeah, he's pear-shaped and has no hair. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
No, it's Elliott Brown. So Jamin Pelly, I was asking him about Elliott Brown and the defensive line in general. And Jamin said, well, if you took Odell Willis and Willie Jefferson and had a baby, it would be Elliott Brown. He said the way that he moves his arms, he looks like Willie Jefferson.
Wow.
And his spin is just like Odell. Like, so that would be the guy I would be keeping an eye on. And he is a super nice guy. We talked to him at Fan Day, very humble. But he's got a motor. So I'd be watching for those two guys on the defensive line. That other spot on the other end it'll probably be rotational. You'll probably see Noah Curtis in there, who is also a Canadian who taken a big step last year. There's a guy named McKnight that you will likely see on the side.
Romeo, what a name.
Romeo McKnight, right?
Yeah.
Is it like he's right out of like the 16th century, right? Romeo McKnight? Come on.
That's a fantastic name.
Like, who doesn't dress up like a knight just to be like, yes, my name is Romeo. This is amazing. I have a new shirt planned. I don't know if you know
you
or
do?
not. If he makes the team. Yeah, I have a new shirt. No, he's also got a great move. So I'm excited to see what those guys will do. And then if you take the one step back to the linebackers, you've got Niles Morgan that's going to be starting likely at Mac. You've now got Tony Jones that is going to be at Will. And at Sam linebacker, so far there has been this rookie named Leon O'Neal that has really stood out and really has when he blitzes, it's immediate. And so I'm excited to see what he brings to the team as well. And he's been playing with the ones quite a bit. That doesn't mean he's secured it, but from what I've seen, it looks really good. So sometimes bringing some of that youth in makes a big difference. And not that I'm not sad to see Serezna and AC Leonard go, because they did play so many other roles, but I'm not as worried about the defensive line as I was in the middle of the offseason.
Now, I'll ask you, I look at the secondary, and to me, it looks like the leader now is Luchez Purifoy, who
100%.
spent a lot of time in a Chris Jones defense, but the rest of the defensive back group maybe got some valuable time last year, but young overall.
Yep.
Is that a group you're kind of most concerned about on this team, or what is the group that you are concerned most about?
Oh, if I had to pick a group that I was most concerned about, it would still be the offensive line. I think that I'm not saying that they're bad, but they had a rough time last year at a number of spots, and nobody changed. Now, there's something to say about having consistency, and I can appreciate that side of it. But it's still a point of contention as far as are they able to give Mac enough time? Are they able to find a way to open those holes for Kevin Brown and Javon Leake, who has been playing kind of a backup running back role? Are they going to be able to do that against some of these other top defensive lines? And because they haven't really changed much, I don't know about that. So that was one that is probably concerning for me. The DBs would probably be the next step of what I'd be worried, but they're guys that have all had great moments last year and are now getting into their second year. Kai Gray coming in as the corner. Nobody throws the ball his way. he's a monster. Bratton is back at half, and he has looked great so far. And he had some great moments last year. Marcus Lewis is back on the other corner because he had a great start to the season and then got injured. And then they've been rotating Marleshon Franklin in at either half or safety, with Purifoy doing the other. And so I think there is Purifoy has really embraced the leadership role this year. I even had Thomas Jack Cardilla from the offensive line shout out Luchez Purifoy as a leader. And you don't usually see that, but he is that leadership in the back. And these guys are taking that next step up. So I think they have a lot of speed. There's a lot of talent. The trick is can they blend together to play in the CFL game where you've got the likes of Kenny Lawler and Kean Chapin Baker that can motor down the field and turn around on you and get that catch. So it's going to be interesting to see how they blend together.
Nice. So right off the top of the segment, we were talking about McLeod Bethel Thompson, but let's talk about the three other Argos that you guys kind of pillaged, which, not a bad idea to, take from the Argos, right? So you got Curly Gittens Jr., you got the dynamic Javon Leake, and then you got Boris Bidet. So tell me about what you think those guys are going to bring to the team.
Well, the one thing I will say up front is I don't know if you've ever met Boris Beatty, but that guy is enormous. I did not expect that at all. I'm like, holy man, you're big. Like, wow, you're like a real football player. And it's crazy.
Whoa.
I always say his name wrong. I got to stop doing that.
Yeah, you called him Bidet. I'm pretty sure he would beat you up for that. So
Boris Beatty.
So great kicker. I do think they are going to have him doing more of the place kicking and stick with Jake Julian doing the punts. That's kind of what I have seen in camp so far. I think that Dean Faithful sticks around though, just because we only have the one global in Etivan. I always say his name wrong, but he's mostly going to be on specials. But if he ends up getting hurt, then we're going to need a global of some kind. Although I do think that we might see the new kicker, which I can't remember his name. I just remember it's 72 Blanchard, that we just drafted. He's been putting on a show at camp as well. So I'm curious to see how that goes, but I mean, Boris Beatty is the kicker. Like, there's no doubt about it. He's the place kicker, likely the kickoff guy, and he seems to have brought a good energy to the team. Javon Leake is everything you would expect him to be. He is dynamic on returns. He's been taking a fair amount of rotation at running back. They have put him in a few times as like a halfback, so there's been 2 running backs.
Wow,
just crazy. When who's it going to? Kevin Brown or Javon Leake, or is he passing? You don't know. And it's so that kind of stuff to me is so cool, and I'm excited to see that kind of thing. And Curly Gittens Jr., who we all thought was going to miss some significant time coming over because of the hip surgery, from day one has been lights out. Speed, running like the 40-yard bomb into the corner catching it over the DBs. The connection with him and McLeod is unbelievable, and you just see it as soon as McLeod sees him. Like it's in his hands. It's so Curly has been. We knew he was going to be good, but we didn't think that he'd be as good as he is this early, and he looks amazing. So I'm really excited to see him out on the field in green and gold.
That's awesome. So keeping going there, let's talk about the potential of the offense with Kevin Brown, Geno Lewis, Swerve, Curly, like we were talking about, Dylan Mitchell. What do you think they can do a little bit differently this year to score some more points to help them win some more games?
Well, I think the main thing is that McLeod will be better at getting it in the hands of these guys that you just listed. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Trey and the fact that he can throw the ball as well. But he is learning that kind of pocket passer part of the CFL. He can roll out and hit a guy 40 yards downfield just fine. And he can roll out and that guy's not open and he can take off and nobody can touch him. But Mac can go 1, 2, bang, and it's right where it needs to be. And I think that in itself, if you look at the number of times that they targeted Geno Lewis last year, it was way down. With Mac, that's not going to happen. Like, Geno's going to be getting his 8 or 9 targets a game. Curly's going to be getting 7 or 8 targets a game. Kevin Brown is going to be a big part of the, hand it off early and beat him up. And then at the end of the game, he can take it and take off. And I think if they rotate Leak and Brown, which I feel like they might do, Brown's going to be fresher at the end of the game and it's going to be bonkers. So I think... I don't want to just come in and be like, yes, I am an Elks fan. I understand. I think it will be better. I just think that there's going to be a lot less balls hitting the dirt. And we saw that at the beginning of last year. We saw it a bit near the end of the season when you're playing against these really good defenses and Trey isn't quite used to that speed yet. That's where the learning is going to come from him. McLeod knows how to do that. He knows how to read those guys and he knows how to figure out where that ball needs to be and whether it needs to come at 100 miles an hour or it needs to sail over at 60 miles an hour. He'll do whatever he needs to do because he's done it often enough. So I'm pretty excited to see and Swerve. I think he after a really good year last year, there's a lot of plays where he can get it at 5 yards and turn it into 30. So that to me is a pretty exciting option. And Dylan Mitchell has been not as active in training camp. I don't know if he's nursing something or something like that. But there's a couple other guys, Malik Flowers, Deontez Alexander has been a receiver as well. And they've stepped in and made some plays that even I'm like, ooh. Okay, like that's kind of wild. So get the ball into the playmaker's hands. And I think that's where McLeod brings a big benefit to this offense.
That's good to hear. I don't think there's going to be any more interceptions thrown mid quarterback sack either. We saw that.
God, I hope not.
Last, I'm going to ask you some positive stuff going on off the field. I think the atmosphere is going to be really interesting this year. The upper deck is closed, but I already got an email as a season ticket holder that used to sit in the upper deck, offering me the chance to sit back in the upper deck in the need that or the event that those seats would be open with the enough tickets sold, which tells me that maybe they're planning to have some fans in the upper deck with enough tickets sold. The home opener against the Riders on June 8th, and this season celebrating 75 years of football in Edmonton. That kickoff to 75 dinner is already sold out. It's happening June 6th. And I think one of the biggest comments from longtime season ticket holders in Edmonton that we've heard is that the Elks they haven't embraced their history as much as some of those longtime fans would have liked. It seems like they're really doing and making an effort on that this year. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty cool celebration, I would say, in Edmonton.
Oh, that first week is going to be unbelievable. And I don't know if you had a chance to see as a season ticket holder what one of the gifts was this year. But it's this.
Oh, you got it already. That's beautiful, man.
It's a little like 8x10 poster, but it basically has all the guys that are on the Wall of Honor, except for one, which is Jason Tucker, which might be, hey, maybe that's a hint on what's happening later in the season.
The Lions are in town, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But
what's a season ticket holder gift? Asking for a Rider fan.
Hey, it was a shoestring the one year.
Sorry, but go ahead.
The Elks only started they did that last year and this year. And as far as I know, this is the main one. But you want to talk about embracing your history. Like basically every decade to some degree is shown on this particular picture. All guys that were great playing for the team. And it's not like they, blanked out the old name or anything. Like it is knowing that that's where we came from and this is where we are now. And 75 years is a big deal. So on the Thursday night, I'm going to the banquet. There's going to be the most alumni at a banquet that there have been at any of these events. I would stay tuned on the Wednesday of that week if I were you. Watch your socials. On the Friday, I can't remember exactly what's happening on the Friday, but then the Saturday at the game, they're having a massive autograph session.
Nice.
There's proclamations from the mayor, all these types of things. So I think that they're really embracing this 75, and I'm thinking that will bring a number of people out. As far as opening the upper bowl when they get the chance, I think you may see that on the home opener. You may see that on the return Labor Day game. You may see that at closer to the end of the year if they're actually doing well, right? Then there'll be a demand to open those spots up. So I think that's huge, but they're also starting to embrace that game day doesn't have to be just about the game. They're embracing tailgate. They've moved to a new, just a location just south of where it was before, but it will bring everybody into a nice space to have their tailgate spot. They're going to open up a deck off of the Jackie Parker room that will then, people will be able to mingle through there. And it's kind of making it more about the entire event of being at the game. So I'm pretty excited to see what they can bring in this year and what they plan to do is all of these things you were talking about earlier with the private ownership and bringing those people through and showing them what they can do or what might be possible. I'm pretty excited to see how that plays out.
What's your tailgate spot?
193 and 194 is where Mike and I will be. If you can't find us, we now have car flags that have the turf district on them, so you should be able to see us that way. At the tailgate, we'll be giving away these fancy pins when it'll focus. There we go. We've got about 200 of those, so those are special to grab a hold of. And the tailgate menu is out on all of our socials, and thanks to Mike for getting that all done. And so now we've got 5 of us that are all part of the football family right in a row. And so you can get, food, visit. We'll have the game on, get some Janelle cupcakes, and then Chad will bring some other options that'll fit along with what we've got. So it's going to be a great atmosphere and a really good chance to meet with all the football family and get a little tailgatey before we go into the game.
Oh, the new season is here. It's going to be a good time in Edmonton. It's going to be a good time across the country. Andrew of the Turf District on YouTube, on X, wherever you get your podcasts. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on the show to talk green and gold.
Thanks for having me on. I always love chatting with you guys.
And joining the show now is the manager of digital media with the BC Lions. He's on the First and Now podcast. It's Nik Kowalski. Thanks a lot for doing this to talk BC Lions.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks guys for having me. Like I was just mentioning to you guys, love talking CFL football and of course love talking BC Lions.
The Lions are coming off back-to-back 12-6 seasons, but back-to-back West Final losses in Winnipeg. It's the 70th season of BC Lions football. It feels like a team on the cusp of greatness to me. What about you?
No, I get that feeling too. Being around these guys every day, you can tell it's a strong culture. I'm wearing my For the Culture shirt right now, so
Nice.
we're all bought in on that. And yeah, unfortunately, those last two West Finals haven't gone the way the team wanted to. Not putting up many points in those games. It's a tough environment to go into Winnipeg, right? And a lot of guys here will tell you that getting first place is a massive step in taking that next step, because then you play that West Final game at home and you also have one fewer playoff game as a result, right? So it's a Grey Cup or bust kind of season. Vernon Adams Jr. has mentioned that. I know there's high expectations here, and there should be with the talent on this team.
That's exactly what I have next year. Vernon Adams Jr. saying Grey Cup or bust. And look, it is the goal of every team, but in a Grey Cup hosting year, with the way the last two seasons have gone, it even feels a little bit different and even a little bit more pressure. How does the team kind of block that out a little bit and try to keep it down? Because sometimes that pressure can get to a team, I think.
Yeah, for our own content, we've actually brought that question up too to guys like Ryan Phillips, who was part of that 2011 team that won the Grey Cup at BC Place, and even a guy like Vernon. And the answer they'll give us is that, yeah, they bring it up. Like it's something that is brought up more so at the start of the training camp even, and then everyone kind of knows that in their mind, but it's not something that you think of every day, and you kind of take things day by day, right? It's the common goal is to win the Grey Cup, but if you're too fixated on that, you're not focusing on the minute details of the game, right? That's something that they're always preaching, is getting better every single day and winning the day and a result like that. And I think there will be pressure, but I mean, you talked Vernon Adams Jr. came in and had to fill in for Nathan Rourke, and then he got benched for Nathan Rourke in the playoffs, and now he came in next season as the guy, and everyone was questioning that it was a downgrade from Nathan Rourke. And I mean, we saw what happened last year. He was on a 6,000 yard pace, right? So he definitely lived up to all the pressure and everything that came with him. So I don't question that Vernon can't handle any pressure in this team either. So it'll be there, but they've shown that they can handle it.
Nice. So Nik, after seeing what's happening at training camp, is there an area of the team's game from 2023 that they seem to be focused on improving?
Well, obviously the first thought that anyone would have is the addition of William Stanback, right? And he didn't obviously dress yesterday in Calgary, but he's someone who he's motivated as well too, right? He talked to him, even though he did win a Grey Cup with the Montreal Alouettes last year. He's someone who has a chip on his shoulder and felt that he wasn't treated properly before coming to BC, right? Because he was released by the Alouettes before we signed him ahead of free agency. So William looks good too. I know it's an area that Jordan Maximics even talked about, being more balanced on offense. And having a guy like William Stanback too. And the thing I've noticed with him, it's tough to gauge obviously with the run game when you're watching training camp, because there's no tackling obviously, and they don't go down or anything like that. But William, he's a big guy, he's a strong body, but at the same time he has that breakaway speed when he kind of busts those runs open in camp in their team reps. He looks fast too. It's not just a strong body. He looks like he has that breakaway speed, and we even saw that last year. I always think about when we went to Montreal, he busted off like a 70-yard touchdown run on us. So it's nice to have him on our side now.
Yeah.
So switching over to the receivers, so no more Lucky Whitehead, no more Dominique Grimes. Alex Hollins had almost 1,200 yards last year, and Keon Hatcher had over 1,200 yards last year. Looks like Justin McInnes is going to have expanded role in 2024 as well. What other pass catchers should fans be looking for?
Well, from day one, the team has been rolling with Travis Fulgham and Aiden Eberhardt in the first team. And Eberhardt's a guy who last year was wearing number 77, new body in camp, and you couldn't help but think, who is that number 77 that's catching everything? And then the preseason game in Regina we go to, and he makes like 3 highlight reel catches. And people were saying, this guy has like a little Brad Burnham in his game with the type of catches he's making, just getting hit, doing whatever it takes to come up with the football, right? And
I remember.
as a result, he earned a spot on this team, right? And he started at the start of the season because of some other injuries in the receiving core, and now with the departure of Lucky and Dom to Ottawa, and Lucky still hanging around in free agency, Aiden's been with the ones, and he's looked really good in our fan fest scrimmage. He had a diving touchdown. Those highlight reel catches have been a constant in training camp, so he looks really strong. And then, I mean, right from rookie camp, Travis Fulgham had to participate in that, and he was someone who VA was frequenting lots in the Skelly reps and the team reps, and he's been getting a lot of balls thrown his way. He looks as advertised, a guy that had that crazy season in 2020 in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then. But at the same time, though, it's in Skelly reps and team reps over 2 weeks, everybody's going to make some plays too. So I know the teams was high on a guy like Stanley Berryhill, Ed Lee, who was returning. They were both returning yesterday as well. Devin Ravenel. So there are still guys here that are going to compete for more spots, but we're trying to emphasize, at least on the content side on our podcast and everything, that anyone that's worried about this receiving core taking a step down, it's not going to happen, especially with Vernon calling the shots at quarterback.
I'm really interested on the other side of the ball to see what the D-line is going to bring this season. Matthew Betts had 18 sacks last year. He's in Detroit. David Menard has just departed the team, but in comes Pete Robertson, who spent last year in Saskatchewan, and then Christian Covington after spending several years in the NFL. Like, what are you expecting to see from that defensive line this year?
Well, Pete's come in and wreaked havoc for sure. And around the very first rep of main camp at our team session, Pete had a knockdown on VA, and he's had a couple of those over camp. So, and Pete's obviously one of those guys that I think everyone in the BC Lions organization is happy to have on our side now, right? He ended up, I know it's not on purpose, and I know he doesn't even like talking about this, but he was someone who got to our quarterbacks last year and ended up injuring both of our quarterbacks the last 2 seasons, right? But that just happens when freak accidents happen, right? When you get quarterback sacked. But Pete's definitely been with the ones all camp, and he is the candidate to replace Matthew Betts' position. And then Covington too. He's a really nice guy, really genuine guy. Everything you hear from him, talking about that he wants to be here for years and he wants to do whatever it takes to bring that common goal of winning a Grey Cup back home. It all reeks genuine. He's very, very approachable and all that. And unfortunately, he's been dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury in camp, so he's only suited up for a couple of practices since we've been here. But I believe he's getting a little more healthier now, and I'm not sure at this point. Coach Campbell still has to declare a roster for Friday's game, but he definitely probably could be a candidate to dress in that game at this point. But that's another thing too. A guy like just to add to the defensive line, a guy like Marcus Moore, who's in his second season now, kind of the Aiden Eberhard of the defense last year that you notice him standing out as a first-year player. He actually played some playoff. He played in the playoffs too for us, but he's been working with the ones with Covington out. He's kind of been beside Josh Banks with Covington not practicing, and Marcus is a physical dude, a big body up in the middle there, and also he's a little physical, or he can muck it up too. So he's been a good presence there, and someone to keep an eye out for too this season.
Is there any, like, the defense overall looks like there's a lot of continuity going on there, and obviously that is a good thing year to year. Like, Ryan Phillips really has his unit, and it looks like they're always ready to go. They were a menace at times last year. Is the secondary group kind of looking pretty close to last year's group?
Well, there's still a spot or two up for grabs right now, right? Because Jalen Edwards-Cooper left in free agency, so there's that field corner spot or the right corner spot. Because last year they played left and right in defensive backs. They never played field or boundary. That's how highly they thought of Jalen Edwards-Cooper and Gary Peters on their respective sides, right? But so Jalen's spot is up for grabs at that field corner now, and also TJ Lee is still recovering from his Achilles injury, right? So while he is here, he's not practicing at all. So they've had a guy like Ronald Kent rolling with the ones. He was someone who definitely is standing out right from the get-go in rookie camp. That's number 4 on defense. And then even a guy like Christophe Beaulieu has got reps. He's a third-round pick out of Laval. Has a knack for the football. You can tell in training camp he's been making a lot of interceptions, a lot of breakdowns, or a lot of knockdowns, sorry. And then another guy like Tyon Davis, who's another name I'm sure no one really knows listening, but there's always first-year players that are getting their chances, right? So Tyon Davis has also been a guy getting reps in the first team secondary. And then the only new addition, I guess, or veteran addition would be Keontae Evans. And he's been with the ones too, right? So kind of an under the radar signing in my mind, because he's put up some good years in Calgary, went over to Montreal last year, won a Grey Cup. So comes with great experience. I know you can see him, Gary, Marcus Sales all talking and coaching up the young guys, giving them pointers too. So while there is a lot of continuity in that secondary, there still is a starting spot up for grabs right now.
I want to ask about the backup quarterbacks. I don't know. Is there anybody that's got a leg up on the number 2 spot? Jake Dolegala coming over from Saskatchewan. Dakota Prukop is in there. And as we've seen over the past few years, it looks like the number 2 guy is going to have to play at least 1 or 2 games throughout a season. It seems like the most successful teams have a guy that can step in and play when called upon.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that Coach Rick Campbell and Neil McAvoy, the general manager, they definitely preach that you need more than one quarterback. And they even talk about the room. They don't talk about even 2 quarterbacks, because there's a guy, there's 4 or 5 of them, right? And they're all communicating constantly, all growing together, with Jordan Maximic as the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator. But it's not, I don't think it's my say or my call to say who has a leg up on the spot, but what I will say is that Jake Dolegala has been with the second team throughout camp. Dakota Prukop's been getting third team reps. Chase Bryce as well, who's the other quarterback here. Chase obviously played the entire second half yesterday in Calgary and put up the best passing statistics, right? I think he was like 10 for 16, moved the ball well in the fourth quarter. So I'll leave it up to the coaches to decide who has a leg up on the second string quarterback. But yeah, Jake's the guy who's been working with the second team all camp and has a strong arm. He is very, very tall. Funny guy too. It's been nice getting to know him a little bit over training camp here. So yeah.
Now, on the field, the team's exciting. They were exciting last year, but really off the field, the excitement on the West Coast the last couple of years has been awesome. Fans across the country are noticing. There's Touchdown Pacific this year in Victoria, Labor Day weekend. That sold out in record time. I talked about the 2000 championship team going on to the Wall of Fame. I like the Gravy Bowl, presented by BC Turkey, by the way, Thanksgiving weekend. And then another home opener concert. Like they just keep bringing the excitement on the West Coast, and it seems like such an exciting place to be a CFL fan right now.
100%. I tell everybody that I can that BC should be Canada's team right now. We're exciting. There's a lot of fun stuff going on, like you just mentioned. And that's a credit to obviously Amar Doman, the owner, rejuvenating this market, and even Dwayne Vanu, the president, too, played such a large role. And it's a pleasure working for those two and getting to carry out their vision, right? So right from the concert kickoff that we're getting ready to announce Monday morning here, to like the Gravy Bowl that you said. I even love the Watermelon Smash as well.
Oh yeah,
I look forward to if you're in Vancouver, even if you're a Riders fan and want to travel to that, even if you're a CFL fan and want to travel to that game, it's such a fun street party beforehand. And then obviously Saskatchewan fans travel well, so the atmosphere is top notch in that building when Saskatchewan comes. But Touchdown Pacific's another one that, I mean, it's such an unknown. It's going to be exciting, but there's such an unknown factor to it, right? Never having a game out on Vancouver Island. I've had the pleasure of going to Victoria a couple times over the last 12 months, and it's an awesome place. That city is going to be jumping that weekend, and it's going to be an awesome weekend to kick off Labor Day. So it's a big season, the Grey Cup's here as well. So this feels like there's one thing after another, but I mean, no complaining, right? It's what you want for a CFL market.
Yeah, so you mentioned it. Talk about the 111th Grey Cup that's coming up here. How is Vancouver going to raise the bar yet again?
Well, there's still a lot of things to be announced, right? But at the president that Amar Doman has set, it should be a fantastic Grey Cup. They did announce the early plans for the street festivals the other month, and I know they got the zip line. I think that was maybe one of the massive takeaways about
looks cool.
What's going to be going on downtown. So I'm not too much into heights, so I don't know if I'll be
It looks terrifying.
I've been sort of I've been sort of razzing the likes of like Bob Marjanovic and Farhad Malji to do it and get some content out of them on that. So see if they'll do it, and I can film them do it. I'll gladly do that, but I don't know if I'll be going on it. But Vancouver is awesome in the winter. It's something that I'm born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, so my winters are used to being snow and cold and all that, obviously, right? Living in the prairies, but then you go up to Vancouver in the winter, and to me, it's not even winter. It doesn't snow, so
it's
and
crazy.
The temperatures are warmer, so that's going to be that in itself, in my mind. Just speaking as a prairie boy, that's going to be a major advantage to this Grey Cup. Is that it's going to be warmer outside. Probably don't have to bring your parka and don't have to worry about any of that. And the convention centers that they have all these the team parties in and all the other events, they're right along the water. Got a beautiful view of North Vancouver over it. And it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really cool to look at and really cool to be a part of too.
Nik Kowalski is the manager of digital media with the BC Lions. He's a co-host on the First and Now podcast. Can you say anything for fans to look forward to as far as your side of things, content to look forward? Because some of that stuff, the access that you have and the curtains you take us behind on YouTube and everything, it's been so cool to watch. What other plans do you have or irons in the fire?
Yeah, first and foremost, that's I gotta acknowledge, guys like Rick Campbell, the head coach that allows us. We have to, ask him a lot of times for permission to do some certain things, and a lot of the times or pretty much every time we ask, he does say yes, and he's great with approval and all that, as is general manager Neil McAvoy. But the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of what BC Lions fans or CFL fans should be looking forward to for our content is definitely our Arrow Up series. So our plan right now is to roll out just one large training camp episode that we've been grinding away at. We've been profiling first year players. We've sat down a couple of coaches. We've gone into meeting rooms this year. That's kind of a different wrinkle that again, Rick, our Ryan Phillips, Jordan Maximic have allowed us to do this camp. We did some cool stuff with Vernon Adams Jr. yesterday at the preseason game that'll be featured in this Arrow Up documentary, and we've been just trying to evolve it, right? Trying to make it better and trying to give fans all that access that they deserve for supporting this wonderful game we have. But that's the main thing. But there's also these one-off pieces, right? Like we have Liam Thompson shoots a lot of video with myself, and he's someone who puts together those one-off content pieces like the Sean White going undercover at FanFest. That's always a classic, hilarious piece of content, right? So there's stuff like that too. We're not just trying to. I really love the long form stuff. It's my favorite part of the job. But we also do these great short form pieces, and the highlights that we post every day, the podcasts that we do First and Now, right? So there's a lot of stuff coming out, and I'm excited for it all.
Okay, who brought out the VHS camcorder at training camp? I saw that TikTok. That thing was pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. That's Liam. So Liam has the creative process for all of that. He's always bringing new ideas to the table, executed that one flawlessly in my mind. I thought even the thing too that I think the average maybe content consumer doesn't realize is that we're obviously not allowed to use licensed music, right? So that's a big hassle. So he sends me the first cut of that video, and it sounds like a 90s Brooklyn song that fits like perfectly, right? But that's just from our library that we have to choose from of royalty-free music that we choose from.
Wow.
So I thought that was great too. That was my first thought actually, was wow, this is a really cool song to match with the video, right? So it's obviously when we're creating content, there's a lot of barriers. Like the music one's a big one, a good example that I like to give up, but we have to work around it, and that's a good example of coming up with a unique idea and polishing it off with a unique sound.
Well, love the work you're doing, and love the work that the Lions overall are doing. So thanks for coming on the pod to talk about the 2024 edition of the team.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day, guys.
And joining the show now to talk Winnipeg Blue Bombers football is Zach Schnitzer, a contributor at Bonfire Sports. Thanks for doing this, man.
Oh, buddy, like I was saying before, you guys must have been so desperate. You're like the Bombers in the 2010s, like when we were 0-18. like desperate for talent. When we brought in Nick Moore, remember that? Kyle Walters had his first big swing was Nick Moore, and he was absolute garbage here. Yeah, nobody wanted to come to Winnipeg. It was sad. But anyway, happy to be on with you guys.
And now Willie Jefferson says, come on down to Winnipeg.
Exactly.
First in the West for 3 straight seasons, 4 straight Grey Cup appearances. Have the Hunters become the hunted now, Zach?
They have become the hunted. And you know, it's funny, like I was joking about, you know, the Nick Moore signing in 2014, but like back then, just to get into the playoffs was a pipe dream for the Bombers. And 2016, we made the playoffs under, you know, who was it? It was Matt Nichols. It was Matt Nichols' first full year, and we made the playoffs, and it was like amazing. And even though we lost the heartbreaker to BC, we had made the playoffs, and we made the playoffs again, and we built our way up to the Grey Cup. But it's funny. It's like this is how people in Calgary must have felt, or the Patriots. It's like you make the Grey Cup and you win the first 2. It's like you expect to win the next one and the next one. And it's like Grey Cup or bust pretty much. And so you become almost entitled. But I am entitled. Like I am pissed off the last 2 Grey Cups. Like we lost by a combined 5 points in both on the last play of last play of the game. And so you wonder, like, it's not easy to get, even though it's the CFL, and you know, if you win the West, right, you only have to win 1 game to get the Grey Cup. But anything can happen in football: injuries, changes in personnel, the weather. Like, you know, the Stamps still that big. Sheldon, you're probably laughing. The Stamps still better than others. All those West finals they lost. I think of 2013, Saskatchewan came in and kicked their butts in that cold weather. But like, it's not a given that you get back to the Grey Cup if you're the best team, and I still think they're the best team in the West, and they are the hunted. But it's a bitter pill to swallow, and this Bombers team, you know, it is again Grey Cup or bust.
There has been a bit of a coaching shuffle with the Bombers this year, but obviously names that are, you know, familiar after years of coaching the DBs. Jordan Younger is now the DC. Richie Hall remains on the staff. And then after years of setting records on special teams, Mike Miller is now the special teams coordinator. What have you noticed from these 2 guys at camp, if anything, yet?
Well, it's been fascinating, right? Because you look at that Jordan Younger moving up to the DC spot, and it's like Richie Hall's still there. And then you saw, it was very surprising that the old special teams coordinator, Paul Boudreau Jr., all of a sudden was gone. It's like, what happened? Like the deck was shuffled here a little bit. And I think what it was is, with the coaching cap, they knew that they would probably lose Jordan Younger unless they promoted him. And they didn't want to lose Richie, so they probably, you know, decreased his salary a little bit. But then you can't afford Paul Boudreau Jr. So then who do you promote? Well, the guy whose career just ended, who's the GOAT, right? Mike Miller. In fact, I know I heard through back channels that when Mike Miller passed Jason Araki for most special teams tackles, they actually got him a goat, like, skeleton from a local farm.
They're going to say an actual goat.
No, well, it kind of is, but like a dead goat. Anyway, wow. So like, but on the other hand, it's like, it's not super surprising because the Bombers gave up chunks of yards on returns. Like, they could not stop returns. They were the least penalist team on returns, but and kick coverage, but they gave up a lot of yards, and it bit them in both Grey Cups, quite frankly. So maybe it's not super surprising. From what I've heard, I haven't heard much about Mike Miller as a coach, but the players, when interviewed in the preseason and in camp, have been glowing about Jordan Younger. They say he understands the game. He gets players. He relates to players well. Guys listen to him. He has great ideas. So from what I've heard, he's you know, his promotion was taken really well by the defense.
Nice. So a price had to be paid to give guys like Brady Oliveira and Dalton Schoen shiny new contracts. So which of the offseason losses per personnel there concerns you the most?
That's a great question. I think it's Jackson Jeffcoat. You know, the two Jeffs, right? They were the pillars manning the defensive end spots, and they would wreak havoc on quarterbacks, especially if you look at the 2019 Grey Cup, what they did to, what's his name? I don't even remember his name anymore. Who was the quarterback for Hamilton?
Oh, Dane Evans.
Dane Evans.
Yeah.
Kind of forgettable. Oh my God. You guys get this? Like, as you get older, like you don't remember things anymore. I used to remember everything.
So I replace useful things in my brain with CFL stuff, unfortunately. So
I don't even have useful things though.
Yeah, it's maybe that's coming. Maybe that's coming. 37 for me is in December.
Oh, so you haven't hit 40 like me, buddy.
No.
Just wait, Sheldon. Just wait, Travis. Yeah, so like Jackson Jeffcoat, here's an interesting stat. Willie Jefferson did not record a sack last year when Jackson Jeffcoat wasn't playing. That's how impactful Jackson Jeffcoat is. I think Derek Taylor talked about this when they were actually keeping track of quarterback pressures, which is an important stat, maybe even more important than sacks. Jeffcoat had the most pressures in the league. I think it was a couple of years ago. So he was incredibly impactful, but he couldn't stay healthy. And so I think the Jackson Jeffcoat for me is 1A. I think he commanded too much money, exactly like you were saying, Sheldon. There's only so much bread, right? And so they have some guys behind him. Celestin Haba is probably the front runner, American guy. He had 4 sacks in 8 games last year, so he looks good. Taiwan Garbett and Chauncey Rivers each had a sack in the preseason game in Regina. They looked like they had good get off the ball. So I think that's 1A, but I think 1B for me is Jamarcus Hardrick. Of course, you Rider fans know well. Oh man, was that awful to see him in green when I watched that stream on CFL Plus? Oh my God.
It'll be awful if he hurts
would
Key
like
and Shaver Baker.
Yeah.
What's that?
So it'll be awful if he hurts Key and Shaver Baker after he keeps chest bumping him into the air.
I know. He's an energetic guy. You know what? Honestly, he's such a good guy that I can't even be mad at him. Like, he was such a good guy in the community and his energy. Yeah, so I think that's also a loss. I mean, he's a right tackle. He's not the left tackle, so he's not blocking Zach's blind side. They do have Eric Lofton in, who's, you guys know, in Regina. He's a CFL journeyman. He looks like he's the front runner to take that spot, but when you're a team like the Bombers that relies so much on the run game, you mentioned Brady Oliveira for first down production, it'll be interesting to see how they adjust with Lofton, or it could be Chris Ivey is another guy who's played in that spot in the preseason and practice. So I don't know. I would say it's Jeffcoat. Losing Jeffcoat is tough. Losing Jamarcus Hardrick is also tough.
Well, I'll ask you a little bit more about the defense. It's kind of weird at this point in the preseason already having a little bit of injury problems. Adam Bighill's on the 6th game. I don't think they expect him to miss 6 games, but Cam Lawson, a D-line, on the 6th game. Demario Houston leaves to go to Calgary from the defensive back group. Is there a lot of positions up for grab in the secondary, and maybe even who's going to fill in for Adam Bighill? I don't even know if he is replaceable, honestly.
You know what? This is the interesting thing. Like, this is kind of a reload year. There's a lot, like, unlike the last 3 years when the Bombers have been dominant, there's a lot of positions up for grabs, just as you say, Travis. And it doesn't, like, we lost to Demario Houston, but then also Brandon Alexander's been out, our safety, big hitting safety, although he's getting on in years. I saw him at FanFest. It was the Bombers Fan Fest today. I saw him outside the stadium, and I said, dude, when are you playing? He said, I'll be ready week 1. So We're good at safety, but Nick Howlett has filled in well behind him at safety, the Canadian guy. He laid a licking on AJ Ouellette in the preseason game the other day. Like, I didn't think people could hit AJ Ouellette that hard and him not, get thumped a little bit. But so I like Nick Howlett. But yeah, Biggie's a tough one to replace. And honestly, the guys behind him who can play middle linebacker, even if they had an ounce of the talent, he's really the quarterback of the defense. On the other hand, I do think, and I hate to say this because I'm afraid Biggie will hear this and like just crush my head between his thumb and forefinger, but he's lost a step. He really, he struggled with injuries. You saw that in the Grey Cup last year. I think he's lost a step. So who's behind him? It's Shane Gauthier, who's a Canadian. He's okay. He's more of a special teamer. I don't think he's the guy you want to be your starting middle linebacker. And there's a couple other guys behind him. Moses, Jamo. Like I don't know these guys from the wall. So that's definitely a concern, especially the Bombers have really done a good job at stopping the run in the past few years. But DB is also a spot that is interesting because Mario Houston left. Winston Rose seemingly is unsigned still. I think he kind of lost a step, and he was replaced by a guy named Jamal Parker, who looked really good at the cornerback spot. But Jamal Parker himself is on the 6th game.
Yeah.
So not only is Biggie, it's also Jamal Parker. And unlike Biggie, who O'Shea said probably won't need the whole 6, they haven't mentioned Jamal Parker's health. So he looked really good. He's not playing. So who's left? Right now at DB, we've had a guy named Tyreek McGee, who was here last year for Bombers camp. He's looked pretty good in camp and also in the preseason. He played quite well. And then, of course, there's Canadian Tyrell Ford, brother of Trey Ford, who was with the Green Bay Packers last year. He's looked really good in preseason and camp. So I think, and also to have a Canadian cornerback. Like, I don't know you guys named maybe another one, but I can't think of a Canadian. It's not a position that Canadians usually play, right? Maybe, I don't know. What did Davis Sanchez play? Was he a cornerback?
He might have been half even. I don't even know.
Or a halfback?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. So
Glenn Suter.
Glenn Suter.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, he played safety. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, man.
Where they hide the Canadians. Anyway, Tyrell Ford has looked really good. So I'm excited about him. I'm not too concerned because then at the halfback position, we've got CFL West All-Star Evan Holm coming back, and then Dietrich Nichols, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the CFL. He's kind of like one of those guys. He doesn't get a lot of stats and a lot of all-star nods because nobody throws the ball at him because he's just that good. So I think we'll be okay. And then rounding up the defense, we've got at will linebacker is Kyrie Wilson, who I also think is extremely underrated. And then at strong side, at Sam, we've got Retta Cramdy, who took the position over from Alden Darby, who was very good. So Retta Cramdy supplanted him. And then there's another guy named Brian Cole, who's kind of like, he can play a run-stopping linebacker role, but also can play the Sam, which is pretty incredible. He's also a good special teamer. So he's an American who I think can fill in at that spot. So I think we'll be okay on defense, but I think the defense for the Bombers will take a while to gel.
Awesome. So let's switch gears to receiver. So Nick Dembski, Drew Wolotarski, Kenny the King Lawler, and Dalton Schoen remain, but Rasheed Bailey and Brandon O'Leary-Orange are gone. So is there any room for a new face to make an impact, and who do you think that might be?
That's another interesting camp battle, right? Because who's going to play that fifth American receiver spot vacated by Rasheed Bailey? Now, Rasheed Bailey, for a guy that was maybe not as highly touted and didn't get as much production, still had over 500 yards of offense and 6 touchdowns. That's pretty good production for your receiver behind Dalton Schoen and Ken Waller. So who's that fifth American? And he was also an incredible blocker, by the way, very physical, versatile. He could run the sweep. He could go downfield. He could be a possession receiver. So Rasheed Bailey is a big loss. Honestly, it's hard to say. There's a bunch of guys that are battling for that spot. One guy that my hombre DB likes is a guy named Josh Johnson. He's a big receiver. I think he's about 6'4". He didn't play in the preseason game. I'm not sure if he was nicked up or they just didn't really even think they needed to look at him because he's played with the ones in camp so far. And then there's another guy with the ones named Cody Case who has looked good. So there's a couple of guys there, but they brought in a lot of receivers this year. So we'll see. It should be interesting.
Yeah. And then also, so making his return to the Bombs after a few years is Chris Strevler. So what are we expecting from Chris Strevler back in the blue and gold?
Well, let me say this, and this might be hyperbole, but I'm an idiot fan, and like I'm not an expert. I'm just a fan. And as a fan, I can tell you, I think if Chris Strebler had played in the last 2 Grey Cups for the Bombers, they would have won the Grey Cup both years. I think he is that important to the Bombers. You saw it in the 2019 Grey Cup. Yeah. He's not a backup quarterback. Yes, he runs short yardage, which is typical of the CFL backup. He's a change of pace 1B to 1A of Zach Collaros, because he has a bunch of packages that Buck Pierce, the offensive coordinator, will use him for. So he can run. I mean, he can truck guys. Like, he's built like a linebacker. And he's blazing fast. So he can truck guys. He's really big. You saw it in the preseason game on the run pass option, the RPO. So he can fake the handoff. He can hand the ball off. Teams don't know what he's going to do. And then, of course, now this isn't his strong suit per se, but he can throw the ball. Who is it? Sapamon, who just hates Chris Strebler? He says, he's got a noodle arm. He can't throw. He isn't going to beat you with his arm. But if you're a defense and you've had to prepare against a classic pocket quarterback named Zach Collaros, who's arguably the MOP of the league every year since 2021, and then you have to prepare for Chris Strebler, who's going to run. Is he going to pass? Is he going to hand the ball off? Heck, are they going to have 2 quarterbacks on the field? Someone's got to do it. Who's going to be the first team to do it? It could be the Bombers, right? Because Chris Strebler can also catch footballs. So he caught a football from I think it was it Brett? Oh no, it was what's his name? Who threw that ball? See, I don't even remember names anymore, guys. It's really pathetic. Darvin Adams threw a pass.
Oh yeah, Darvin could throw. Yeah,
Darvin could sling it. So I think Chris Strebler is a 1B. I think he can play the traditional short yardage role, but then he can drop back and toss a rainbow to Nick Dembski, who's one-on-one coverage with the safety on a second and one, right? So I think he's extremely versatile, and I think it's an already number 1 offense in the Canadian Football League. I think they'll pick up right where they left off.
One thing I'm interested about is kick returner, and the Lions and the Bombers, they've been so close, and it almost comes down to things like special teams and even home field advantage in the West Final. And Janarian Grant has demolished the Lions over the past couple years. Now he's not there. What's the kick return situation looking like in Winnipeg?
It's a great question, and it's a little scary as a fan because Janarian Grant was that impactful. You saw him return one first time ever in a Grey Cup a couple of years ago. Like you said, Travis, he's really feasted on the Lions. I'm not sure what it is, but he's really ate their lunch. And I don't know what happened with Janarian Grant, to be honest. Like, nobody knows where he is. Mike O'Shea was asked, like, where's Janarian Grant? He's like, sometimes these things happen. And it's kind of a mystery. And it's like, what? Like, what happened there? So I think what happened is he wanted more money. I think he's also been injured. And I think, like you were saying, Sheldon, there's not enough money to go around when you pay Brady Oliveira that kind of money, when you pay Zach Collaros that kind of money, when you retain Dalton Schoen, when you retain Sam Bryant and Waller. So there wasn't enough money, even though I think he's the all-time leader in kick return touchdowns in Bombers history. So there were 4 or 5 guys who were auditioning for the role in the preseason game in Regina. None of them really stood out. They all kind of were about the same. One guy who I thought looked maybe a little bit of a nose ahead of the other guy was a guy named Chris Smith. But there was a guy named Aaron Cruikshank who didn't look too bad. But that if the Bombers don't clean up their kick coverage, they're going to need to flip the field in other ways. And that's kick return. And that's what Janarian Grant brings or brought, right? And I guess the last thing I'll say on this is there's a guy who's unsigned right now named Chandler Worthy. No one has signed. He was second in the league last year in kick return. He was kind of made redundant by James Letcher. Yeah, his name is. So he's a guy who's a big play returner, but it doesn't look like they're going to bring him in. So unless they're negotiating right now, or they hope to see something from one of these random guys that they brought in, I don't know. It's definitely, as a fan, something that I'm concerned about.
Now, at the beginning, I asked you about the hunters becoming the hunted, and now I'm just thinking out loud here. The last 3 West Finals, I think BC goes to Winnipeg, and I know Rourke played injured 2 years ago, but I think they get to now Princess Auto Stadium and they're like, I don't know what to do. I can't hear myself think. The Riders go there in 2021. They force all these turnovers and still lose the game. Like, is it essential that the Bombers have home field at West Final to get back to the Grey Cup for a 5th straight year?
Kyle Walters, our GM, talked about this years ago before this sort of dominance happened. He said, our goal every year is to win West because you only have to win one game to get to the Grey Cup, and you're at home. And we do have a rabid fan base. I'm not saying we're louder than the good folks in Regina at the toilet bowl, but we're pretty loud. No shade to the toilet bowl. I haven't. I'm sure I'll be crushed. I'm sure I'll love it. Yes, I have never experienced, because I'm a fan first, right? So I sit in the stands, and I have never experienced a crowd like the past 3 West Finals, particularly that one in 2021 against Saskatchewan. That was just a BC thing.
Is that the game Lucky Whitehead went to when he was a BC Lion?
No, I think that was 2 years ago. Lucky Whitehead came to a game. He was still a member of the BC Lions, but I guess he was injured. So he was sitting in the stands with fans wearing a beanie. I don't remember why he was wearing a beanie, but it was cold. And yeah, I was like, what are you doing? And then people were like, is he coming back to Winnipeg? Like, what's going on here? Who's he cheering for? So I think home field advantage is extremely important for the Bombers, like any team, but especially when you have a rabid fan base, like we do in all the prairie teams, right? Maybe I'll include Hamilton there. We have that advantage of the cold. So I think it's important. Is it absolutely necessary? Do I think the Bombers can win on the road? Sure, they can win on the road, but it's not as easy. You go into Mosaic Field on a cold November afternoon,
and they've done well there in the playoffs. So
they have, except that damn Grey Cap.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think it's important. I don't know if it's essential, but I think it's certainly important.
Well, and then last thing I'll mention, the Bombers posted a $5.9 million profit last season. I think they're clearly the flagship team in the CFL right now. This year, it seems like they want to try to keep the core together the best they can for the Grey Cup in 2025, and then maybe a more fulsome reload a little bit to the roster. Do you get that sense as well?
I do. Like you saw in 2012, the home field advantage, or 2011, I guess the Lions won at home.
Yeah.
It was 3 years in a row. Then the Argos won at home in 2012 for the 100th Grey Cup. The Riders win at home in 2013. I was at that game. It's an incredible home field advantage. Hamilton 2021 in overtime. I was at that game too. That was the best football game I've ever seen.
It was wild.
But anyway, it was wild. But I think that 2025 home field is really interesting for the Bombers, and it's kind of coincides with where you start to think, is Zach Collaros going to continue as the one quarterback of the base of this team in 2025? He's getting on in years, right? So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do in 2025. I expect, like you were saying, they're trying to keep the band together so that they can make a real run at the 2025 World Cup. But there's a lot of changes even this year, so especially with some of the injuries. So we shall see. I'm optimistic though. I think they'll do well. I think they'll struggle out of the gate a little bit, take some time to gel. Last thing I'll say though is their schedule kind of favors them. They've got 4 out of the 6 games to start the season are against Ottawa and Calgary. I think Ottawa and Calgary will both be better this year, but I still don't think they're the cream of the crop in the CFL, and what better way to kind of gel against the teams. So it should be an interesting season, fellas.
Yeah, we're happy it's here, and it sounds like the preseason might spill over until July for the Bombers.
I know, crazy schedule, right?
Yeah.
And did that preseason game happen? I mean, are there stats for it? You know what Darren told me?
I think we have more stats than last year.
Well, better than last year. He said that when Genius Sports first got involved and they were going to revamp the stats, this was, I think, in June of 2023. Randy Ambrosi said that it would be fixed by July 2023, a month later. It's still not fixed.
Whew.
Yeah.
If I didn't meet those deadlines at work.
Right? I think yesterday, Toronto, the Argos were winning 90-2 or something. And, there was 3 players on the field named, I don't know, Curly Gittins, Edmonton.
Oh, that's how bad it is.
Yeah. What is with all the Argos in Edmonton this year? It's interesting.
Well,
remember that a few years ago, all the Calgary Stampeders went to the Argos, and then all the coaches as well. Now they're all in. Now the Argos are in Edmonton.
Chris Jones with the Toronto Hail Mary. That's all it is.
Are you guys over? Have you guys forgiven Chris Jones? Right,
I'm over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did what he had to do. And
we actually had some good seasons when he left. It was Winnipeg, really. So that's who we blame. Anybody but ourselves.
We ruined it, but I'm glad that Saskatchewan fans hate Calgary fans more than us. So that feels good.
Zach Schnitzer is a contributor over at Bonfire Sports, and we'll see you at Mosaic for Labor Day, man. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks. Honor to be on with you guys. Big fan of the show.
Thanks again to Britton Gray, Ryan Ballantine, Andrew, Nik Kowalski, Zach Schnitzer for helping us preview the West Division. Sheldon, let's get to our standings predictions. I think this is the year for the BC Lions, and you're going to see that a lot in my predictions. I've got BC first, hosting the West Final. That will be the difference of going to the Grey Cup or not. Winnipeg will finish second, still get that home playoff game. Saskatchewan in third, Edmonton fourth, Calgary fifth. Look, don't come at me. Somebody's got to be fifth. It's just the way I see it going. Sheldon, I wrote the predictions on the sheet before you did. You were rattled because I have it the same as you.
Yep, we think alike. So there's no bragging rights on the West Side, I guess, because we pretty much have every single thing the same.
I got the MOP as Vernon Adams Jr., the MOC as Brady Oliveira, and the Grey Cup, the 111th edition of the game in Vancouver, BC, will be the Lions winning at home, just like in 2011, but this time over the Montreal Alouettes.
Yep, I honestly, before I even looked at the prep sheet, yep, that's exactly how I see it happening. And as a Rider fan, obviously I hope I'm wrong, but BC, they're going to be the juggernaut this year. They're going to be what Winnipeg has been the last few years, I think. I think they finally have all the pieces ready to go, and Vernon Adams is going to just march them all the way to hoisting that Grey Cup at home for those BC Lions fans.
And you know what? Honestly, I could see any of Edmonton, Saskatchewan, or Calgary finishing third. Really, I really could.
It's going to be tight. Yeah.
It's a long season.
I think there's a crossover for sure.
Oh, you do? That's an extra wrinkle. I don't think there's going to be a crossover.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
Week 1 is
here.
That's
our one difference.
So let's make our fantasy lineups. We're both a part of the CFL Fans Fight Cancer Fantasy League. So week 1, I feel like there's some manageable salaries to play with so far. So I feel like I've got sort of an all-star team as my fantasy team, which means I'm going to get 38 points and finish 7,000th in Canada. So my quarterback is Bo Levi Mitchell, finally making his return to McMahon Stadium. Now that is a week 1 matchup. My first running back is AJ Ouellette of the Roughriders. Then I got Brady Oliveira as my second running back. I actually want every part of that Bomber offense early in the season. Kenny the King Lawler is my WR1. Tim White, my WR2. The BC Lions are my defense this week. And Aiden Eberhardt, my $2,500 special in the flex. I will have to check the depth chart as they come out. But I believe Nik Kowalski when he said, and we previewed the BC Lions. I'm going to take his word for it. But I'll blame myself if it goes wrong. What's your lineup looking like, Sheldon?
Yeah, like I kind of went, it's pretty star heavy, except I decided to save a little money at the quarterback position. So I'm rolling with Cam Dukes. I think I like what I saw in that game in Regina at the end of last year. I think he does have a future in this league. So now is the time for him to show it. My running back, I have AJ Ouellette, who's also my captain. That worked for me, 16 out of 18 weeks last year, so why stop that? For running back 2, I'm going with Mills. Like I said on last week's show here, I think that the motivation maybe that Dave Dickinson has going for him is gonna pay off here. For receivers, I have Justin McInnes because I think that he's gonna get some more balls, especially with Dominique Rhymes and Lucky Whitehead not there. And then wide receiver number 2, Kenny the King Lawler, just like you. I'm taking Saskatchewan's defense, playing Edmonton again. The defense, they showed out in this last preseason game. So I think the defense is going to be one of the strengths in Saskatchewan. And this is probably the most expensive flex player ever, but my flex is Brady Oliveira.
Yeah, that's a pricey one. You're going running back heavy early in the year. I like it. Yeah. Now, week 1 has arrived. Let's lock in those predictions. The first game of the season is a Grey Cup rematch in Winnipeg. It is Alouettes and Bombers. I'm going Winnipeg here. What about you, Sheldon?
I am also going Winnipeg.
All right, the second game of the week, Friday Night Football. Bo Levi Mitchell making his return to McMahon Stadium as a member of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Where are you going, Sheldon?
I am picking Hamilton. Bo's going to be very motivated, I think.
Yeah, I'm going Hamilton as well. Then Saturday, Riders, Elks. I think both teams desperately want to win to start the season. I'm going Riders here. I am not confident in it, but currently I'm going green and white, Sheldon.
Yeah, same. Also, I'm not confident, but I think the players are going to want to give Corey that first win right off the hop. So I'm picking the Riders.
And then the BC Lions are taking on Cameron Dukes and the Toronto Argonauts to wrap up week 1 of the CFL season. I think it's going to be a special season for the Leos, and they're going to start off with a win, Sheldon.
Yeah, BC's going to win, but it's going to be like 45-40.
Whoa!
So Cameron can get me lots of points in fantasy.
I like it. Enjoy week 1 of the CFL season. We will be with you to recap the games and talk about all the action so you can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out in your favorite podcatcher on YouTube and support us on Patreon as well. I'm Travis Currah. He's Sheldon Jones. Enjoy week 1.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.